Can I welcome the Prime Minister Leader of the Opposition and all new members to the first questions to the Prime Minister, and in which case we're going to start with Callum Miller.
Question 1, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I know the whole House will be shocked by the news that a soldier has been attacked in Kent. Our thoughts are with him, his family and our armed forces, who serve to keep us safe. We wish him a swift recovery. Mr. Speaker, the whole House will also want to join me in wishing Team GB good luck as they travel to Paris for the Olympic Games. And Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others discussing how this government will bring about the change the country has decisively voted for. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings today.
I begin by welcoming the Prime Minister to his first questions as Prime Minister. I also associate myself with his remarks about the soldier in Kent and, of course, my wishes to the British Olympians. At Coombe, in my constituency, Thames Water has pumped sewage into the River Evenlode for over 2,600 hours in the last year. Thames Water was allowed by Ofwat to withdraw £7 billion in dividends, yet now wants to jack up my constituents' bills. I welcome the water bill in the King's speech, but would the Prime Minister agree with my constituents and me that the system is broken? And will he now commit to scrapping Ofwat and replacing it with a tougher regulator that will finally put people and planet ahead of water company profits?
Can I welcome the honourable member to his place and thank him for raising this important issue in relation to water. And customers should not pay the price for the mismanagement by water companies, and we've already announced immediate steps to put water companies under tougher regime, and the Minister for Water will meet the bosses of failing companies to hold them to account for their performance. After 14 years of failure with our rivers and beaches, it falls to this government of service to fix the mess of the failure of the last 14 years.
Nadia Whitson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I welcome the Prime Minister to his place. Mr. Speaker, many young trans people and their families are extremely concerned about the restrictions on puberty blockers implemented by the last government. One of my constituents, a parent of a trans child, told me, "I'm so worried about my child. I'm terrified for what this means for them and where Britain is going on these issues." Will the Prime Minister meet with young trans people, their families and organisations supporting them, so that he can hear why they feel so strongly that these restrictions must be reversed?
Can I welcome the honourable friend back to her place? Our guiding principles must be the well-being of children. And this is a serious government, and we will approach that question with care, not inflammatory dividing lines. The CAS review was clear that there's not enough evidence on the long-term impact of puberty blockers to know if they're safe. And the Health Secretary will consult with organisations supporting young people and families, and I will ensure that there is a meeting with her and the relevant minister as soon as that can be arranged.
Now come to the Leader of the Opposition, Rishi Sunak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I join with the Prime Minister in expressing my shock at the attack on a British soldier? Our thoughts are with him and his family as we wish him a speedy recovery. And I also join with the Prime Minister in his warm words about our Olympic athletes. I've no doubt that after years of training, focus and dedication, they'll bring back many gold medals. Although, to be honest, I'm probably not the first person they want to hear advice from on how to win. But I'm glad in our exchanges. I'm glad, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm glad in our exchanges so far we have maintained a cross-party consensus on important matters of foreign policy. And in that spirit today, I wanted to focus our exchange on Ukraine and national security. The UK has consistently been the first country to provide new capabilities to Ukraine, such as the long-range weapons that have been used so effectively in the Black Sea. Now, those decisions aren't easy, and I was grateful to the Prime Minister for his support as I made those decisions in government. And in opposition, I offer that same support to him. So can I ask that he continues to be responsive to Ukraine's new requests so that they don't just stand still, but can decisively win out against Russian aggression?
Can I thank the Leader of the Opposition for not only raising the question of Ukraine, but doing it in a way which can maintain the unity across this House, which has been so important to the Ukrainian people. And I can assure him that we are, of course, talking to Ukraine about how they deal with the Russian aggression that they are facing, have been facing for many, many months. And I will continue to try to do that in the way that he did, which is to reach out across the House to share such information as we can to maintain the unity that is so important.
Rishi Sunak.
I thank him for that response. Now, I also found that one of the UK's key roles as Ukraine's closest ally is to encourage other countries to follow our lead in providing new military capabilities. And in that vein, when he saw Chancellor Scholz recently, I'm sure he thanked him for the considerable air defence that the Germans are providing the Ukrainians. But did he also raise with him the issue of the Germans perhaps providing long-range missiles, just as the UK, America and France have now done?
I had the opportunity in Washington at the NATO Council to talk to our German counterparts. There was a strong theme there on Ukraine, discussed with all of our allies, and part of my message was to urge all of our allies to provide further support where they can to the Ukrainian people, and that was well received, and there was unity coming out of the NATO Council. That's what we must all do.
I'm glad to hear the Prime Minister raise the NATO summit as well, because I very much welcome the message that came out loud and clear from that summit, and indeed the Prime Minister's words from the dispatch box on Monday about Ukraine's irreversible path to NATO membership. And so does he agree with me that fatuous Russian claims on Ukrainian territory must not act as a block to Ukraine joining the NATO defensive alliance?
I wholeheartedly agree, and it is for NATO allies to decide who is a member of NATO, formed 75 years ago, proud and probably most successful alliance that's ever been formed, and that's why it was really important at the summit that we were able to say there is now this irreversible path to membership. That's a step forward from a year ago, and President Zelensky was very pleased that we've been able to make that successful transition.
The opposition.
Thanks to the complex legal and diplomatic work that the UK has led over the past several months, together with our allies Canada and America, the Prime Minister will, I hope, now find that there is a sound and established legal basis to go further on sanctions and seize Russian assets and use them to fund Ukrainian reconstruction. Now, that work has taken time, but I hope he is able to take a look at it, and can he confirm for the House that this work is something that he will take forward, because if he does, I can assure him that the opposition will support him in doing so.
Again, I'm grateful for this opportunity to say how united we were on the question of sanctions across this House. The use now made of what has been seized and frozen is an important issue on which I think we can move forward. And I know the Chancellor is already beginning to have some discussions about how we can take more effective measures. Again, I will seek to reach out across the House as we do this important work together.
The opposition.
I very much welcome the Prime Minister's response, but I also welcome both his and the Defence Secretary's recent emphasis on the importance of the Tempest fighter jet programme. It's a crucial sovereign capability, as he mentioned, and important for our alliances with Italy and Japan. Furthermore, however, other countries also wish to participate, and in government we had begun initial productive discussions with our friend and ally Saudi Arabia about their desire to potentially join the programme. So could the Prime Minister confirm that he will continue those initial positive conversations with Saudi Arabia, and again I can assure him that he will have our support in doing so?
Well, let me make this absolutely clear. This is a really important programme. Significant progress has already been made, and we want to build on that progress. And I've had some initial discussions, not least in Farnborough, where I was just a few days ago.
Leader of the Opposition.
Finally, Mr. Speaker, can I just say that in the dangerous and uncertain world that we now sadly live in, I know firsthand how important it is that our Prime Minister can use his prerogative power to quickly respond militarily to protect British national security, sometimes without giving this House prior notice. Now, these are perhaps the most difficult decisions that a Prime Minister can take, and I welcomed his support when I made them. And I want to take this opportunity to assure him of the opposition's support if he deems it necessary to take similar action in the future. So does he agree with me that whilst the use of the prerogative power is sometimes politically controversial, it is essential to ensure the safety and security of the British people?
I agree it's essential, and our security is the first duty of government. I was grateful to the Leader of the Opposition for reaching out when action had to be taken to me personally to ensure that I was briefed on the sensitive issues that lay behind the decisions that he had to take. And as I mentioned to him last week, I will endeavour to ensure that we proceed in the same way so that he has access to all the information that he needs to come to a determination, which I hope will be, to be able to support the position that this government takes. Thank you.
Kim Ledbeat.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and welcome back. Can I congratulate the Prime Minister on such a positive start to his premiership and on resetting the dial on politics as public service, as a force for good. Of our different views and opinions in this chamber and beyond. It's a very important message. And as such, would he join me in wishing the very best of luck to the 83 cyclists who have set off from West Yorkshire this morning on the 9th Joe Cox Way bike ride, travelling 280 miles down the country to London, celebrating all that we have in common through the power of cycling, including, sadly for the cyclists, probably quite a lot of sore legs and aching muscles.
Of course I will wish them good luck. I admire them. I'm not sure I envy them. It's 280 miles. But it's a brilliant cause, and the whole House, I think, misses our dear friend Jo. And I know that she would have been incredibly proud to have seen this government in place and would have played a big part in it. And, you know, I'd like to welcome my honourable friend back to her place. And I know that she will continue in Jo's spirit with the same dedication and determination. And I think I'm right in saying that her parents, and of course Jo's parents, are with us in the gallery today to see this first PMQs. We will always have more in common than that which divides us.
We come to the Leader of the Lib Dems, Sir Ed Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I welcome the Prime Minister to his place at his first Prime Minister's questions? And can I associate myself and my party with the comments he made about the appalling attack on the soldier in Kent? And our thoughts are with his family and friends and comrades. And can I also associate our side with his comments on Team GB and particularly talk about how we want them to succeed in Paris? The Prime Minister has many messes that he's inherited. One of them is the scandal over the carers' allowance repayments. An example is my constituent, Andrea, who is a full-time carer for her elderly mum. She went back to work part-time, mainly for her mental health, she tells me. She was earning less than £7,000 a year and has been hit by a bill from the DWP for £4,600. But Andrea is just one of tens of thousands of carers facing these repayments, punished for working and earning just a few more pounds than the earnings limit. So will the Prime Minister agree to meet with me and other family carers to try to resolve this matter?
Yeah. Can I thank the honourable member for raising this? And he, of course, has been a tireless advocate for carers. And I don't think any of us could be other than moved when we saw the video of him and his son that was put out during the election campaign. He talks about Team GB. I'm glad he's in a suit today because we're more used to seeing him in a wetsuit. But in relation to this issue, look, we have a more severe crisis than we thought as we go through the books of the last 14 years. We must review the challenges. I know they don't like it. They don't like it. There was a reason the electorate rejected them so profoundly. So we'll review the challenges that we face. We do want to work with the sector and where we can across the House to create a national care service covering all these aspects. And we'll start with carers and those that work in the care sector with a fair pay agreement. But I'm very happy to work across the House with all the people that care so passionately about this particular issue.
Fred Davitt.
For the Prime Minister's response, I hope he will look at this matter, though, on carers' allowance. Family carers save the taxpayer £162 billion a year. And if we get this right, many could go back into work. But there's another care crisis that's probably even bigger, and that's the crisis in social care. I'm sure, like me, he's met millions of people around the country, heard about millions of people for whom this is their biggest issue and has been for decades. After a once-in-a-century election, does he not think there's an opportunity for a once-in-a-century chance to fix social care and thus help our NHS? So can I ask him to set up a cross-party commission on social care so we can address this urgent matter?
He's right, it is a crisis. I'm sorry to have to report to the House it's not the only crisis that we've inherited. There's a crisis of failure absolutely everywhere after 14 years of failure that this government of service will begin the hard yards of fixing, including on social care. We will work across the House. We do endeavour to create a national care service. That will not be easy, but we can begin the first steps, and we will share that across the House where we can.
Emma Littlebell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. For decades, my constituent, Jack Taylor, has been continuously ignored by previous governments. He and other nuclear veterans have been denied access to their medical records and compensation. The Prime Minister has rightly said these national heroes deserve full accountability and justice. Will he therefore consider supporting a special tribunal with statutory powers into this 70-year-long scandal?
Can I first express my gratitude to the service personnel who participated in the British nuclear testing programme. It is right that I think nearly 5,000 now have got the nuclear test medals in recognition of their service, and the veterans have the right to apply for no-fault compensation under the War Pensions Scheme. And I will ensure on this issue a meeting is arranged for her with the relevant minister.
Stephen Flynn.
Mr. Speaker, may I again warmly congratulate the Prime Minister on ending Tory rule. In his campaign to do so, he was, of course, They're too close for comfort now. They're too close for comfort. In his campaign to do so, Mr. Speaker, he was, of course, joined by Gordon Brown. And just 5 days before the general election in Scotland, on the front page of the Daily Record, Gordon Brown instructed voters to vote Labour to end child poverty. Yet last night, Labour MPs from Scotland were instructed to retain the two-child cap, which forces children into poverty. So, Prime Minister, what changed?
I'm glad he mentioned Gordon Brown, because the last Labour government lifted millions of children out of poverty, something we're very, very proud of. And this government will approach the question with the same vigour. With our new task force, already we've taken steps: breakfast clubs, abolishing no-fault evictions, decent home standard.
Order. Props are not allowed to be used. Never mind, put it down. We don't need any more. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, already we've set up a task force to put that vigour in place. 3 breakfast clubs in every primary school, abolishing no-fault eviction, decent home standard, Awab's law, and a plan to make work pay. But I would just say this: before he lectures everyone else, he should explain why, since the SNP came to power, there are 30,000 more children in poverty in Scotland.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to see the government's swift action in officially calling for an immediate ceasefire, the release of all hostages, a rapid increase of humanitarian aid into Gaza, the restoration of funds to UNRWA, the commitment to complying with potential ICC arrest warrants, and to recognising a Palestinian state. but too many innocent people are still dying every day. There is nowhere safe in Gaza. So what further pressure can the Prime Minister apply to bring about an urgent ceasefire?
Both the Foreign Secretary and I have set out the urgent need for a ceasefire to Prime Minister Netanyahu. We want a pathway to a two-state solution, a safe and secure Israel alongside a viable sovereign Palestinian state. And I used my first overseas trip as Prime Minister, particularly at NATO, to raise this with world leaders. And under a Labour government, this subject will be discussed, negotiated and fought for at the highest levels on the world stage. The alternative is standing on street corners protesting. Ultimately, only one of those will deliver change.
Jordan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and can I congratulate the Prime Minister and welcome to his place. And I'm sure he will want to reassure the many parents and teachers in Edinburgh West who have expressed concerns about the implication for our state education system in Scotland of the VAT increase in independent fees, which he proposes. Edinburgh City Council, led by the Labour Party, have produced 5-year projections which show we do not have capacity in the city to accommodate pupils who may leave the independent sector. Moreover, how will he ensure that the VAT raised in Scotland from those fees can be reinvested in already hard-pressed Scottish education?
I do obviously understand the aspiration that parents who work hard and save hard have for their children that they send to private schools. But every parent has that aspiration, whichever school they go to. And I am determined that we will have the right teachers in place in our state secondary schools to ensure that every child, wherever they come from, whatever their background, has the same opportunity. And I do not apologise for that.
Mr. Speaker, I welcome last week's announcement this government will be introducing a new publicly owned company, Great British Energy. This will be critical to ensure this country's energy security while meeting our climate goals and lowering energy bills. Will the Prime Minister make assurances to communities up and down the country that they will benefit from good skilled jobs and opportunities that Great British Energy promises to unlock?
Yes, and I'm really pleased that Great British Energy will be owned by and for the British people. Investing in the energy systems of the future, that means cheaper bills, renewables are cheaper. It means security, so Putin can't put his boot on our throat, and it means the next generation of jobs for years to come. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has achieved something that we didn't think would be possible in such a short period of time. In less than 3 weeks, he has had a significant rebellion and he has suspended 7 of his members of Parliament, all for standing up for child poverty. This from a Labour government. The headlines are awful for the Prime Minister this morning. Poverty campaigners are furious with the Prime Minister. Is his honeymoon over before it's even begun?
Having left for the election campaign with quite a significant number of SNP members and come back with a small handful, I really don't think lectures on what the electorate in Scotland are thinking. If you look at I'm very proud of our Scottish Labour MPs on this side of the House. And I simply repeat the point I made to his leader. Perhaps the SNP needs to account for the 30,000 extra children in poverty in Scotland. Thank you.
Dan Tomlinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The previous Conservative government cut the funding for the police in London by 1/3, taking £1 billion out of the budgets for London's policing and forcing the closure of both of the police stations in the Chipping Barnet constituency. Does the Prime Minister agree with me on the importance of our police stations and in the need to rebuild local policing?
Can I welcome my honourable friend to his place, the first ever Labour MP for Chipping Barnet, and I know he will serve his constituency with pride. And our guarantee will put 13,000 extra neighbourhood officers and PCSOs back on Britain's streets, and that's a fully funded plan. He's right to say that the last government absolutely hammered police numbers, and he will have seen the impact of that in his constituency. And it is telling that the former Justice Secretary said at the weekend that that could perhaps have been done differently. And I'm glad to see the people of Chipping Barnet agree with that assessment and returned him for that constituency.
Rupert Lowe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituents in Great Yarmouth have little doubt that uncontrolled legal and illegal immigration since 1997 has damaged and disrupted their community and undermined their public services. Does the Prime Minister agree that importing millions of people with no thought whatsoever to the brutal consequences has failed our country? I know the good people of Great Yarmouth would much appreciate a yes or no answer to this straightforward question.
I'm not sure I agree with his numbers, but look, I do think that it's serious that the previous government lost control of our borders. Record numbers have crossed the Channel. Since the Leader of the Opposition, when he was Prime Minister for 18 months, 50,000 people crossed the Channel. It's a serious issue that requires a serious answer. And that is why we will set up our Border Security Command to take down the gangs that are running this vile trade. What we won't do is waste further time on a gimmick that cost a fortune and remove just 4 volunteers.
Bill Esterson.
The Liverpool City region has one of the biggest concentrations of offshore wind in the world. 100,000 homes could be powered through the Mersey tidal project. Yet some members opposite want to block the jobs, the lower bills and the energy security from renewable energy. So can I encourage my right honourable friend to resist the siren voices opposite and support a range of technologies, including the Mersey tidal project, to maximise the benefits of clean energy for our country?
Clean energy is at the heart of this mission-driven government. Boosting homegrown renewable energy is the best way to create new jobs, give us energy independence and lower bills for good. And that's why we'll be changing the planning rules to make sure that we can get Britain building again. And not just the houses, but everything that we need, including prisons, by the way, and to make sure we can deal with the mess that we have inherited. I'm pleased to hear of the viable projects that are being advanced, such as the Mersey tidal project, and we'll look at them carefully.
Lewis Quocking.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a privilege to be the first Conservative member to ask the new Prime Minister a question at PMQs. Can the Prime Minister assure me and my constituents in Broxbourne that they will not just have a say, but a meaningful say over new development in the Greenbelt in their area?
Can I welcome the honourable member to his place and be clear, we intend to get Britain building. We will change the planning regime in order to do so. It's held us back for far too long. Young people have not been able to own a home until they're way past the age of 35, denying them the basic dream of home ownership. Of course, we will work with communities, but we will take the tough decisions that the last government ran away from.
Jack Abbott.
Prime Minister, we've got much to be proud of in Ipswich, from a thriving arts and culture scene to beautiful parks and a stunning waterfront. Unlike our friends over the border in Norfolk, we also now have a Premier League football team again. Prime Minister is very welcome to join when Arsenal come visit next year. Despite all those positives, though, after the last 14 years, our town centre is really struggling and desperately needs help. Can the Prime Minister set out to this House the steps he will take to revive town centres like Ipswich?
Can I again welcome my honourable friend to his place? Congratulate Ipswich on their promotion, though not on, I think it's Boxing Day when they visit Arsenal. I'm going to resist the temptation that he puts in front of me to choose between Ipswich and Norwich. But on town centres, he's right that we need vibrant high streets. We need to make the change that we've been voted in to bring about, and that's why we will replace the business rate system to level the playing field, and we will absolutely address regional inequality through our local growth plans.
Edin Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The UK is one of the most nature-depleted countries on Earth, so I welcome the government's signal that it's committed to nature recovery. This is critical to humanity's future as it affects everything from food security to public health and well-being. Please could the Prime Minister tell us how he'll show leadership personally on this existential issue, and in particular will he attend the 16th Biodiversity COP later this year, and will the UK government be launching a bid to host a future UN Nature Summit?
We are committed to nature recovery. It's a really important issue that this government will tackle. And he talks about leadership, and I'd ask him to show some, because it's extraordinary that, elected to this House as a Green politician, he's opposing vital clean energy infrastructure in his own constituency. So I ask him, we will put the plans before this House, I ask him to back those plans.
Joe Powell.
Mr. Speaker, on Sunday night at a community event in North Kensington attended by hundreds of people, 15-year-old Renee Graham was shot and killed in a senseless act of violence, and my heart goes out to his family and the wider community that is feeling anxious, frightened and shocked. Can the Prime Minister ensure that North Kensington gets support from this government at this difficult time, and can he outline what measures the government will take to tackle gun violence and prevent young lives like Renee's being taken in the future?
I welcome my honourable friend to his place and thank him for raising this awful case. The loss of a teenage boy in West London is shocking, and our thoughts, and I'm sure I speak for the whole House, are with his family and friends. I do urge the public to support the Metropolitan Police with any information which could help in their investigation, which is ongoing. Making streets safer is one of the 5 central missions of this government, and this is a shocking reminder of just how important that mission is. And we have an ambition to drive down this sort of violence in our communities. We do not want interventions like this as we've had over the last few years, and it is shocking to hear of this particular incident.
Vickers.
The last government invested massively in Teesside, most recently committing £1 billion to improving transport in our area. That money will protect the future of our iconic transporter bridge, upgrade Thornaby train station, create a new transport hub at Teesside Park and much, much more. Can the Prime Minister confirm, are we still getting our £1 billion, or is Labour turning its back on Teesside?
Well, he talks about turning its back. I think he's the sole remaining Tory MP in the North East or Teesside. I've already taken an early opportunity to make our commitment clear to the plans that we need for economic growth across the country, working with all the mayors who are in place, including those who wear a different rosette, and that's the way in which we will take this forward.
Charlotte Nettles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In a week where the National Police Chiefs Council have declared violence against women and girls a national emergency, Sky News has today published appalling accounts of sexual harassment and violence against women paramedics. Can the Prime Minister please update the House on progress towards the mission board to finally tackle this scourge in our society?
Well, can I thank my honourable friend for raising this, because it is such a serious issue. And we have made a commitment, a mission to halve violence against women and girls. Mr. Speaker, I know from my own experience dealing with these cases as a prosecutor and subsequently just how hard that will be to achieve. It does mean that we'll have to deliver in a different way. We'll have to roll up our sleeves and do difficult things that haven't been done in the past. And in answer to the specific question, we've started work already on the delivery board, and I look forward to updating her and the House on the progress that we're making on this really important issue.
Final questions to Roger Gale.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Speaker. Not a Freudian slip. The old dog is off the leash. Mr. Speaker, can I first thank both the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition for their supportive policies in relation to Ukraine. Their expressions today will have been of great comfort to the thousands of Ukrainian residents in the United Kingdom who simply wish to return to their lawful homes. Further to the answer given to my honourable friend, the member for Broxbourne, can the Prime Minister tell the House how he's planning reforms which will smother fields in East Kent currently yielding bread-making wheat with houses is compatible with his own Secretary of State for Agriculture's desire to achieve sustainability?
Thank you for that question. We have to get economic growth in this country. We've had failure over the last 14 years, and the failure on economic growth has been central to it. There's been failure to build the infrastructure we need, the houses we need, the prisons we need, and I think the whole House can see the consequence of that. We've got prison overcrowding where emergency measures have had to be taken because the building of prisons hasn't kept pace with the sentencing of those to prisons. We've got housing crisis where the dream of home ownership for most young people is simply gone under the previous government. To be over the age of 35 before you can get a secure roof over your head of your own is a huge dash of dreams. We're not going to listen to the party opposite. They put their case to the electorate. The electorate rejected them profoundly. And my advice would be, having sat at that dispatch box for 4.5 long years, is when you get rejected that profoundly by the electorate, it's best not to go back to the electorate and tell them that they were wrong. It's best to reflect and change your approach and change your party.
That completes questions. We'll let the front benches change over.